Alright, guys. Sexism, racism, ageism has passed, but it's still in the spirit of the book. Um, and coming up, there's a lot of excuses for things just in the general sexism realm. And of course, homophobia is coming up, being blamed for the world's problems, I guess. Alright. Contraception. Over the years, there has been a biotechnical revolution in the means of avoiding pregnancy. Pills, diaphragms, condoms, intravenous devices, and a huge increase in fertilization, which is now the most popular method of birth control among married couples. Among currently married couples in the U.S. today, 39% have at least one surgically sterile partner. This includes 28% of all couples who have only had one child or 0 children. It is important to understand this 28% rate. It means these couples will have fertility rates that are below replacement, unless an unsterile partner remarries or a sterile partner has a surgical reversal, which can be very difficult. Researchers in the field believe there will be further improvements in contraceptive techniques in the near future, including the long-awaited morning after pill. Such a pharmaceutical, already on the market in France, is now under review by the Food and Drug Administration. It can plausibly de facto end most of the abortion argument. A woman with access to the new pill, over the counter or under it, can terminate a pregnancy almost immediately without even knowing there's a pregnancy. Now, this is good to point out, and I'm glad you said this, because there's a lot of people, like, I've seen debate on, like, Facebook that says, contraceptives and stuff like that are abortion pills, which is ridiculous. An abortion at least counts once there's a fetus, at least, I assume, right? It would be crazy to go far back into the zygote and say, oh yes, this is an abortion. So I'm glad he's saying that the morning after pill solves the abortion problem, at least. Okay. One goal of better and more prevalent contraceptions has been to allow couples to control their fertility. For users, that has usually worked. Lifestyle factors. All of the above socioeconomic, medical, legal, technological changes, all available to come. All favorable to low and lower fertility, have influenced and been influenced by changes in lifestyles, which in turn have also encouraged low fertility. Delayed marriage. Age of marriage was first measured in the United States in 1890, almost 100 years ago. Today, 1986 data, it is at the highest level ever, 23.1 years of women and 25.7 for men. Just since 1970, the age of marriage has gone up by 2.3 years for women and 2.5 years for men. This rise in age of marriage may not seem like much, but in reality, it is enormous. If you say that in a modern society like ours, age 18 is about the youngest the young women will marry, then the recent increase for females from 20.8 in 1970 to 23.1 years now has increased the years being single by 82% over the course of just a relatively few years. Every year a woman is unmarried tends to lower the fertility rate because it further reduces the number of years that a woman is likely to bear a child, unless she wishes to bear an out-of-wedlock child. Alright. Delay of birth of first child. Census numbers show that these delays, only 48% of couples married 5 to 10 years earlier have one child, 1980 data. The corresponding rate 15 years earlier was 64%. This delay of childbearing is almost surely related to the rise in the rate of working women. Let's both work and save up for a house. In any event, as in the case of later first marriages, it likely depresses ultimate fertility on the grounds of fertility delayed is fertility denied. Divorce. Divorce is substantially more prevalent than in earlier days. Back in 1960, there were only 9.2 divorces per 1,000 married women per year. By 1985, the rate had been more than doubled to 21.5. That yearly rate accumulates. In 1960, there was 35 divorced persons per 1,000 total population. By 1984, there were 121. In absolute numbers, there were 393,000 divorces granted in 1960 and 1,155,000 divorces granted in 1984. 1,155,000. Okay, yeah. In 1984. I think I said that right. On average, sorry about that. On average, it takes 3 to 5 years for a woman to remarry, and that rate is increasing. Women who are divorced are typically removed, at least for a while, sometimes forever, from the pool of likely mothers. Naturally, this too tends to lower fertility, decreased fecundity, as mentioned in the previous chapter. Alright, so I guess the fecundity just has a relational aspect to fertility in general. Though I've often heard this word used in, racial eugenic terminology, so, as mentioned in the previous chapter, as women age, it becomes more difficult for them to conceive. Although the sum is not believed to be overly large, the incidence of medical factors that can make a woman infertile has increased. That is to be expected in a society where marriage and pregnancy are delayed. Women have more time at a medical risk in general, non-sexual sense, and are more likely to have more premarital sexual partners, which can yield an increase in potential fertility impairing venereal diseases. Although a large majority of women, 78%, who have contracted such diseases remain fertile. Okay then. This is so creepily specific. Obviously someone has to know this, I guess. There is much whispered talk these days about very high infertility rates. One keeps hearing stories of desperate couples unable to produce a first pregnancy. Accordingly, it might be useful to try to put some dimensions on the problem. Although the data is complex and far from perfect, to say the least, national surveys conducted by government agencies in 1965 and 1982 revealed that the rate of childless infertile couples had more than doubled over that time frame, with most of the increase occurring by 1976. But, and this is an important but, the rates are still regarded as low when viewed as a totality. In 1965, about 2.3% of all married couples were deemed childless and infertile. That is, actively trying to get pregnant and failing for 1 year. In 1982, the rate was 5.8%. Fortunately, there is countervailing activity. Dr. William Andersons of Norfolk, the past president of the American Fertility Society, makes this estimate, quote, of 100 couples seeking to get pregnant, 80% conceive in the first year. An additional 10% conceive trying for another year. The remaining 10 have a fertility problem. Of these, half can be treated successfully in an uncomplicated way. The remaining half need more sophisticated treatment. And of these, half will be able to conceive and half won't. In short, 97.5% of all couples willing to go the last mile to conceive can conceive. Andrews estimates that 20 years ago, only about 50% of the problem cases could be helped. Now it is 95%. 10 years from now, it will be 85%. Andrews believes that advances in fertility enhancement make up for new increase in infertility. Put another way, Andrews believes that a woman today, if she tries, has a better chance of becoming pregnant than a woman in her mother's generation. Okay. Alright. Another issue is never married. In recent years, the rate of never married women has been relatively low. In 1984, of women aged 40 to 44, only 5.4% had never married. But that reflects matrimony during the baby boom years, when percentage of the current cohort of young women who will never marry is, of course, unknown, but an examination of the recent data has led more scholars in the field to assume that it will be much higher than it used to be. Census demographer Arthur Norton estimates that never married rate of current women will be about double that 5.4. The effect of a sharp increase in never married women has the effect of reducing the likely universe of potential mothers. Oh, I forgot, at the beginning of the book, it said that the census data seem to care only about the woman's pattern of having children, so forgot about that aspect. Alright. Male homosexuality. Oh, thanks. There is an argument about whether there is more of it or whether it is only more open. But in an earlier time, many closet homosexuals got married and had children. This probably happens less frequently these days. In any event, the result is the same, the likelihood of low fertility rates due to the shortage of fathers. So is this just the assumption of data that is probably not being mentioned, that homosexuals don't, adopt or whatever? I feel like that's nonsense, and that, you could still get inseminated or adopt your own kid or something. You know. Oh, by the way, I find it really weird how homosexuality is known as a lifestyle. Like, what the fuck does that even mean? Like, being gay is just something you put on. Okay, maybe I'm short-sighted on this, but I always felt like a lifestyle was a thing you could opt out of. Now, I don't know if you can just opt out of being a homosexual or anything along that line. Now, you could probably opt out of, gender norms and stuff like that, but that doesn't really have any bearing on whether or not you're gay or non-binary. Again, that probably has no bearing. So, seriously, it's like this thing that really triggered me, which I got over eventually, that was saying, COVID was trending, and it's like, who would say this during a plague? Like, in an actual pandemic, it's trending? It's so trendy. When I think of trendy, I think of something that is, it's not life-threatening, it's more or less like a positive thing that people go to on their own, not something that is just happening in general. I don't know, maybe overanalyzing that too much. Alright, another issue for these people, lesbianism. Same as above with mothers, although probably not as prevalent. Damn. Now, my guess was always that, it's hard to tell if someone's hetero or not, because bisexual people, are the game changer and can, be stealthy within the demographic. So, I thought that was cool. I thought that was a cool thought, at least. I don't think that's too mean. People do what they want. No, people do what they do, who they are, how they are. Unmarried couples. Think about how language reflects changing attitudes and changing reality. Once upon a time, when a man had a woman live together with the benefit of matrimony, it was called living in sin, or in a colloquial, shacking up. As the practice became more common, the phrase became neutral and value-free. Living together is the term of art today. A linguistic speech is on to come up with the better phrase than significant other, or POSLASK, acronym for census language, persons of opposite sex sharing living quarters. Creepy. To describe the person one is living with. Census data shows the proliferation in America from 522,000 in 1970 to 22,220,000 in 1986, about a fourfold increase in less than a generation. It is one more reason for lower fertility. People living together without benefit of matrimony are much more likely to bear children than are married couples. Less likely. Sorry, I don't know if I said that. So, consider a young woman goes to college, goes to work, lives with her boyfriend for a while, delays marriage, delays birth of first child, all the while somewhat diminishing, by some measure, their chances of bearing one or many children. It is any wonder the total fertility rates are down so low. Ugh. Alright, and the wild card. First, there was the publicity about herpes and other sexually transmitted diseases. Then there was the ongoing tragedy of the AIDS epidemic. All this has surely changed sexual habits among young people. But what will it mean in the long run? Earlier marriage, later marriage, fewer children, less sex, yielding fewer out-of-wedlock babies, more fidelity, less likelihood of divorce, fewer potential parents because of epidemic-level deaths among young adults, merely more caution? Will a cure or vaccine be discovered in the near future? Will death rates be higher in the U.S. than elsewhere? Will Africa be particularly hit hard? Will there be macro demographic consequences? To all these questions, there are no firm answers. So far, there has been no noticeable change in the key trends discussed in this book. One estimate that has been tossed around is that AIDS could kill 100 million people around the world. Still, that is only about 2% of the total global population. Oh, yeah, sure, okay. Man, this is something my friend said about COVID once, but never mind. Alright, the next section is called values. Finally, all the above factors influence and are influenced by change in values and attitudes. In quotes, women's liberation. It is a shorthand phrase for the complex phenomenon. Although there is now a change in the air, one clear root thought of the original movement was this: marriage, raising a family or a large family, was no longer considered to be the single most important thing in a woman's life. Clearly, that is a view that would have the effect of lowering fertility. A second and third generation of feminists have challenged this view or parts of it. Question: will public attitudes change soon, thereby changing fertility behavior? I hope so. It is the root reason for writing this book, but I would guess that it will take more than a little while to first change attitudes about fertility, and second, to see such attitudinal change translate into behavioral change. How so? First, the argument among feminists and others has been raging for at least a decade. Public opinion polls show there is indeed disenchantment with some of the original tenets of feminism, or the women's movement,